I think I'm ready to give it a try to start this diesel engine after it's sat for the last 10 years without running. You know, I had to do a couple things to get this thing ready to start. Let me show you those now. You know, I've got to get this old battery out of this car. The car's been sitting for 10 years. I loosened up these clamps and I can't even budge these battery cables. So enter my clamping tool now. I just use this to disconnect the fuel hoses over there, the filter, and I decided, wow, this might work for these clamps. Take a look at this. I can get that, look at that, move that baby back and forth, and I can get that battery cable off. Let's do this one. Man, that's tight. All right. I can't believe it. Almost every week I find another use for this unique tool. This other 300 SD has probably been sitting at least 10 years. I don't know. There's no license plate on it. It came out of Canada. It is a US model. I've got to take the glow relay off this one and put on the other one to get it started. And now I'm down here trying to pull off these plugs. And once again, this has been sitting so long, these plugs are kind of corroded to the terminals and I cannot budge them. And so I've already got my clamping tool on my mind. So I thought, well, let's see if we can get the clamping tool in there so I can remove electrical plugs. Look at that. Okay, that one's off. Now we'll get on this big one. Rock it back and forth. Look at that. Can't believe it. Found 2 new uses for this tool in one day. So now I think you can understand why I'm going to start carrying this particular tool in one of the pockets of my shop coat all day long. Okay. And along with the battery and the glow relay, I've hooked up my emergency fuel tank to the fuel system, bypassing the fuel tank. I don't have to worry about all the gunk and old fuel in the tank. Don't have to worry about draining it. And I've got a mix of diesel purge and diesel fuel in this tank. I've loosened up the hand primer pump and I've pumped it through. And I'm getting a good flow through the system. I'm going to do it one more time. Of course, I've got a leaking hand primer pump. But if you look here, you can see that it is pumping. It is circulating that fuel through the fuel injection pump. So you got to remember now, I have not tried to start this. I haven't cheated, okay? I want you to be the first to see if this is going to start. So let's get in and see what happens. Well, I'm not getting a glow light, so I don't even know if that glow relay is working. But I'll also let it sit here for about 10 seconds, and then we'll give it a try. Okay, a couple things. You probably noticed right away that we've got 1 or 2 cylinders that have pretty weak compression. You hear that cranking over, and you can hear that run, 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 which indicates weak compression. I also don't know if that glow relay is working at all, so I'm going to get my meter out now and test that. Then I'll come back and we'll give it another try. Okay, first I'm going to check to make sure I have 12 volts going to the relay itself. This is hot all the time, even with the key off. You can see there I got 12.07 volts. Now I'm going to turn the key on. And I'll get my power lead on one of the glow plugs. Okay, I'm showing 10.30 volts, which means probably at least more than one of those glow plugs is working because of the voltage drop. So I've got power to the plugs. Let's try it again. Come on, baby. You know, there's a good chance that you've got oil that's drained away from the piston rings, causing that low compression. So sometimes you actually need to start these and let it run for a while if it's been sitting a really long time, and then recheck your compression. You know, I'm listening to this engine run, and there's 1 or 2 cylinders that aren't firing very well. Let's go out and take a look. Before I do that, I'm going to come in here and check oil pressure. Oil pressure is at 3+. Pretty amazing that we can get this running like that after having it sat for 10 years. Uh-oh, I got some smoke down here. Something's smoking. Some sort of electrical. I better turn it off and check that out. You see the smoke? All these leaves are going to catch on fire. I'll get this cleaned up and we'll check that out, and then we'll come back and fire it up again. That large open resistor on the W126 is located right under the brake booster, and of course that was all impacted with all those leaves from years of sitting, and you can see I had to blow those all out. I think I've got it mostly exposed. It's not something I'm going to worry about. It could have caused a small fire. I don't think I've ever seen a fire coming out of a turbo diesel engine compartment before. Okay, now I'm going to get back in. Whoa! Listen to that. That was impressive. Now you can see right here it's still running a little rough. But we might be able to get this engine to smooth out a little bit with a little bit of running here. And I've got plenty of fuel in the tank here to let this thing run for 15 or 20 minutes. We're going to be watching for blow-by there. I don't have an air cleaner on it, so I want to be a little careful about the intake over there. I'm not going to run it up to real high speed. Oh, we got a little turbo whine. So I'm going to let it sit here and run for about 15 minutes. Then we're going to come back and we're going to check the blow-by right there. That's going to be a real good indication of the internal health of this engine. The other thing I want to keep a real close eye on is this exhaust. You can see it's smoking quite badly. You got to remember how long this engine has sat, and it could have gummy rings, valves out of adjustment, could have sticking fuel injectors and whatever. But I want to keep a close eye on this, and we'll come back and revisit the exhaust as well as how smoothly the engine's running in about 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes and I'm back. I'm taking a close look at that exhaust smoke. It's still smoking, it's not as dense, but there's quite a bit of smoke and smell from unburned fuel. There could be a number of reasons for that, so I'm not going to panic yet. It doesn't mean the engine's worn out. So, you know, obviously there's things we can do, maybe valve adjustment, fuel injectors, all this kind of stuff, but I don't want to get into all this work until I can really determine whether or not this engine is savable. Let's go up and I'm going to show you a couple of things in the engine compartment. You can see in here now that the engine's running a lot smoother. It's not shaking as badly. You know, if we do the cat dance test and just lightly plug the breather, you can see there's quite a bit of blow-by coming out of the cap, although I've seen a lot worse. You can see the blow-by coming out of the valve cover right here, but there's something very interesting that happened when I plugged the breather to see just how much blow-by is in this engine. Let me show you. You can see there's a bunch of engine oil on these fuel injector hard lines. Look at where that came from. I decided to plug the breather and see what would happen. And after holding, look at that, I got engine oil that's squirting out of the side of the oil filler tube. So that's quite a bit of blow-by in this engine. So what's the verdict? I really can't say yet. Honestly, I really can't say whether this is going to be a good engine or not so. I'm going to come back on Monday and I'm going to give it a very special engine treatment, okay? You're going to be shocked at what I'm going to do, but it will give me an indication whether or not the problems I'm seeing with this engine are just caused from it having sat for 10 years. So I want to do that before I make my final diagnosis. So stay tuned for the next video.